This is Undaunted.Life, a man's podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Let's get into it. Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord, the fruit of the womb, a reward. That is Psalm 127, verse 3. Guys, thank you so much for listening to the podcast today. As always, we are so super duper thankful to our donors. Guys, we can't pull off anything that we do at Undaunted Life without donors like you. We don't have like magical donors behind the scenes giving us hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's guys giving us $25 a month, $50 a month, $100 a month. We can't do it without you. Undaunted.life/donor, or I think that's what it is. Wait, I just forgot my own donation link. Hang on. Undaunted.life/donate. There it is. My goodness. If this is my stream of consciousness right now, this is going to be a problem because we got a lot of quick hitters to get today. So Undaunted.life/donate. But here, we got a lot of quick hitters that we need to get to today. So I'm going to be talking about the Trump White House's presidential message on Holy Week, 50 plus Nigerian Christians being slaughtered by Muslim fundamentalists on Palm Sunday, a state in Australia criminalizing prayer, the debate between Douglas Murray and Dave Stewart on the Joe Rogan Experience, a black teenager stabbing a white teenager to death at a high school track meet in Texas, a proposed California ballot measure named in honor of an alleged murderer, Luigi Mangione, a proposed Colorado House bill that would categorize misgendering and dead naming as child abuse, a proposed Oklahoma House bill that would allow for the chemical castration of child sex offenders, a pit bull mauling a 7-month-old baby girl to death in Ohio, scientists claiming they have resurrected the extinct dire wolf, the UK Supreme Court ruling that trans women are not actually women, surprise, surprise, FBI senior leadership using an internal gag order to cover up the Hunter Biden laptop story. And then also, if you stick with us all the way to the end, which I highly suggest you do so, some of the best jiu-jitsu advice you could ever get. Now, I don't know if you could actually see what's on the side of my camera here. This is not like an incense. I've got like a, what is that thing? It's like puts, water into the air. Man, words are not really my friend today, but that's like a thing. That's like putting water into the air that's going to help me with my voice. So if you see like mist coming from this side, no, it's not an incense. No, I'm not going to be hooking my ponytail to a tree anytime soon. That's just to help with the old vocal cords. But guys, before we get to the main crux of what I want to talk about on today's episode, which is a very serious subject matter, actually, I'm going to turn this thing a little bit. It's getting a little bit intense. We're all over the place to start here, but obviously, recently I talked about Andy Stanley's church, North Point Ministries, and we talked about that video that was released that showed a training that they were doing for their children's workers to give them LGBTQ plus training, showing that they're basically trans affirming at that church. And a few days after that episode came out, I got an email from a former North Pointer, and this is someone who attended Andy Stanley's church. They were very involved. The family was very involved. Obviously, I'm not going to say their name here, but I just want to read to you this email because this is from somebody that actually experienced things on the ground there. So let me go to the email here. I've been listening to your podcast for many years, and it's been a huge help in my journey to become a better Christian man. With that being said, I've been taking this journey while attending a North Point ministry. I will always appreciate the ministry for being a place that the unchurched can go and find a relationship with Jesus. As I grew in my faith, I started to see that Andy Stanley was pulling away from the biblical teachings he once championed. When my daughter entered middle school, I thought it was a great idea to serve as a transit leader for a boys' small group so I could be close to my daughter in her faith journey. In the 6 years that I've served, I've seen the curriculum shift further and further to the left, and I've watched fellow leaders leave because of it. Right now, they are struggling to keep volunteers because of the epic shift towards glorifying sin. My daughter was a victim of these teachings as she was having issues that every teenage girl has where she wasn't feeling comfortable in her own skin. Instead of these leaders taking her through it and letting her know that it's normal and letting me know that there was an issue, they convinced her that she was trans, and then they kept it from me and my wife. Thank God that my wife randomly checked her cell phone and saw that that's what was going on. We worked really hard to bring her back to normalcy, and she has said herself that it was handled completely incorrectly. At one time, we were taught that if kids were having these thoughts, we should talk to them and walk them through biblical teachings to show them that they are fearfully and wonderfully made, and that what they are feeling is a normal feeling for kids going through puberty. The last year has been a nightmare at my church. The Bible-believing volunteers are being pushed out and made to feel like they are wrong and hateful bigots. I thank God that we have found a Bible-teaching local church that was actually planted by other North Point refugees. Andy is making a huge push this year to build more and more churches and has stopped teaching the gospel. Thank you for everything you do. It has been a huge help for me over the last few years. So guys, I maintain exactly what I said, and some of you were not exactly happy with how I couched it. But if Andy Stanley is exactly what I say he is, which is a heretic, a false teacher, a wolf in sheep's clothing, it is very likely that he's not a Christian. And people are like, how could you possibly say that? to put a finer point on what I said, a few weeks ago, Andy Stanley is a master communicator. He is a absolute master. Okay. And so if he were a sales guru, he would be going around selling sales books and sales courses and all that, and he would absolutely crush it. If he was a leadership and management guru, he would have best-selling books and would go around and he would get paid tons of money to consult for huge, Fortune 100 companies, those types of things. But his father is Charles Stanley. So his first big break as a career was running part of Charles Stanley's ministry. I think he was the youth leader, right, under Charles Stanley, right? So that became his platform. So if his dad was an executive at Ford Motor Company, it would have been very, very different. He would have been more of like a boardroom type guy, but he wasn't. He was a, Christian teaching type guy. And so when you're around Christianity for as long as you are, you get very familiar with the Bible, you get very familiar with how to communicate the Bible. But as many people have said and maintained and is true, there's going to be a bunch of pastors that are in hell because they taught people the Bible. They showed people things. They've even exegeted the scriptures correctly, but they didn't have a propitiation of their personal sin debt by putting their faith in Jesus Christ for that, right? So I think it's I don't know if I want to say likely. It's certainly possible that Andy Stanley's not even a Christian, so we should pray for his salvation. But if he doesn't come to faith, we certainly believe that he should repent and come to faith, but he should repent of what he's doing with his church and his ministry and with his flock. And if he doesn't become a Christian and repent of that, then he should lose his ministry, and we should absolutely pray for that. So I just wanted to give you an update there. But we want to get into a subject matter today because there's a lot of people that have been talking about this lately, even a lot of people that are in kind of my group. And it really stems from what was released by the FBI on March the 6th of 2025, because the FBI here in America released an official PSA, an official public service announcement entitled "Violent Online Networks Target Vulnerable and Underage Populations Across the United States and Around the Globe." So this went in concert with a lot of releases from major magazines and news organizations and things like that. So I actually want to read part of the PSA here, and it'll be in the show notes so you can read the whole thing. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, is warning the public of a sharp increase in the activity of 764 and other violent online networks which operate within the United States and around the globe. These networks methodically target and exploit minors and other vulnerable individuals, and it is imperative the public be made aware of the risk and the warning signs exhibited by victims. These networks use threats, blackmail, and manipulation to coerce or extort victims into producing, sharing, or live streaming acts of self-harm, animal cruelty, sexually explicit acts, and or suicide. The footage is then circulated among members of the network and continue to extort victims and exert control over them. So let's talk about the sextortion part of this. That might be new verbiage for some of you, but sextortion. So basically what sextortion is, well, I'll describe an example because there's been lots of these examples as it pertains to teenage boys. A lot of juvenile males from the ages about 9 to 17 have been victims of this. So a kid will be playing a video game, and then inside of these video game networks, they can receive direct messages. And so they'll get direct messages from another person that's purported to be a kid. It's usually a female with some sort of avatar or picture of an attractive female. They get them to go off of the gaming system and onto some sort of a social media app like a Snapchat or an Instagram, where there's vanish mode where, basically the messages can go away. And then they, over time, will start, sending sexy pictures to this person saying, hey, send me pictures back of yourself, of you fondling yourself, or of something like that. And then what happens is these people will pull the veil off, and it'll be like, no, this isn't some, attractive teenage girl. This is a man in Africa. And he says, look, if you don't give us X amount of dollars, we are going to post these pictures and videos you sent us online, and we're going to tag your friends and family, and we're going to ruin your life. And so, unfortunately, a lot of these young men will get in that situation. Again, these could be 10-year-olds, 14-year-olds, right? Just think about what you were like at that age. And some of these young boys, unfortunately, they don't go to their parents, they don't go to the police, they don't go to anybody else for help, and they actually just commit suicide. There was one story where this all happened in like an afternoon. Kid was playing a video game, was caught up in the sextortion thing, and then within a few hours, the kid was dead because he killed himself. Okay, so it's actually happening a lot. Again, I'll post some stuff to where you guys can look at the numbers. And so in the last few weeks, we've seen a lot of think pieces, a lot of monologues from conservative and Christian commentators and pundits. Albert Mohler did a special Saturday edition of the briefing. So again, if you're not listening to the briefing, it's one of the most important things that I think you could be consuming. It's Christian news and it's news and events from a Christian worldview. That's his tagline. But he did this monologue. But the problem that I had is I felt like most people were not really talking about the issue in a correct way. Because some of the most common advice I saw in all these think pieces and podcasts and whatever was, hey, you need to have open communication with your sons, okay? Make sure your sons know that they can always come to you if they're in trouble, whether they go to a party and drink when they shouldn't have, they should know that they should be able to call you. So if they get caught up on one of those things, just know that they could, reach out directly to you. Also, teach your children about the dangers of online predators. Show them some of the warning signs. Show them, what some of the schemes look like. And also watch for behavioral changes in your sons. If there's like these acute, immediate behavioral changes, these are likely triggered by something. So here's the thing, guys. All of those things are good things. Like I am pro all of those things. I co-sign and double check or, double tap, whatever. Like I'm totally cool with all those things. But they don't address the root cause of the issue. And as people were talking about this, I was reminded of this anecdote, this story that someone said. It's not a real story, but it's just like an interesting way to kind of process all this. And so there are 3 hikers that were taking a break by a river and they were eating lunch. And then all of a sudden they hear the screams and the cries of a child that's in the river, coming down the river. They're drowning. They're, help, 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 save me, I'm drowning. So all 3 of the hikers jump into the river. They grab the kid. They pull him back to the shore. They save him. Oh my gosh, so sorry. And they try to start drying him off. A few minutes later, another kid is coming down the river. Help, 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 I'm drowning. So the 3 guys jump back in. They grab this kid. They get him to the side with the other kid, and they're drying him off. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Two at one time. And a few minutes later, another kid coming down the river, and he's freaking out. Please, somebody save me. One of the hikers just takes off running. Right? The other 2 are kind of confused. Where's this guy going? So these 2 jump in, they grab the 3rd kid, they get him out, and they're drying him off, all that. They're like, this is absolutely insane. What's going on? So about 15 minutes goes by. Everything's calm. There's no more kids coming down. And then the random hiker that just took off running in a random direction came back. And his buddies were like, hey, man, where the heck did you go? He's like, I went upriver and stopped the guy from throwing kids in. Right? I feel like that's what's happening in this situation, that most people are the 2 hikers that just stayed down by the river and they just kept going in and saving the kids, kept going in and saving the kids. And nobody's running upriver to figure out who in the hell is throwing the kids in the river, right? So what I feel like everybody is getting wrong about the rise of sextortion of teenage boys is access. Almost no one is talking about access, and that is the crux of the issue. Everyone's like giving Band-Aids to cancer patients, and they're not really, trying to fight the actual cancer. Because the problem is that these nefarious forces, these nefarious groups, these scammers have access to teenage boys. How do they have access to these teenage boys? Because all of these teenage boys that have gotten caught up in this have unfettered access to the internet. They have their own personal laptops. They have their own personal iPads. They have their own personal unlocked smartphones. A lot of these kids have televisions in their room that are also smart televisions that hook up to the internet. They have gaming systems, PlayStations, Xbox, PCs, or whatever, that are in their rooms, right, where they can close the door and no one knows precisely what they're doing. They have no oversight of the internet access of their friends, right? Whether it's at, in someone's home or not. That's the crux of the issue, guys. Yes, I'm pro all those other things, preparing your kids. You can't just completely bubble wrap your kids. But all these kids, again, 9 to 17, they have all of these tools, right? Why aren't we discussing that? Because in this household, again, we have a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old right now. They're not going to have any of those things. They're not going to have unfettered access to the internet. They're not going to have unlocked smartphones. They're not going to have televisions and gaming systems in their personal rooms. And we will have plenty of oversight over the children that we allow into our home and the amount of access they have to those things, and the homes we allow our kids to go to and the amount of access that is had in all of those other places. We're going to have a bunch of awkward conversations with parents of our kids, right? Our kids' friends, their parents, right? Like, hey, who comes into and out of the house? Like who is typically there? Does your kid have an older brother? Does that older brother have a smartphone? How do y'all handle smartphones, tablets, and internet and gaming systems? Is that in a common area where you can watch and kind of see what they're saying? Or do you just let them kind of go into their headphones and go into their room and you have no idea who they're talking to? Do you have a pit bull in the house? Do you have, a swimming pool that you don't have, direct access to whether who's in the swimming pool or not? Like, is there an older brother in the house or an uncle that comes by that's got a pornography problem? Like, we're going to be asking a bunch of questions like that. And you might be like, that's weird. That's crazy. Oh, I'm sorry. It's my job to raise up my children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord and to protect them. And so all these parents out there, they're not fighting against the smartphone thing. They're just going along with it. Why? Because they don't want their kids to be weird. Well, my kid has to have a Snapchat and an Instagram because all of his friends do. I have to let him have unfettered access to the internet because how is he going to play Roblox otherwise? How is he going to play these random video games with his friends? And if he doesn't have his own system that's in his room, then I have to watch him play video games. That's annoying and sounds crazy. I don't want to hear him talking to his friends the whole time, so I'm just going to let him go off into his room. So I'm heartbroken for these parents that have experienced, some of the things that have happened here. But it's like this is an own goal. This is a self-inflicted wound in a lot of these ways. But then also we got to talk about schools, guys. There should be bans on smartphones across the board at every school in America. What is the positive argument for your kid having a smartphone in their pocket, literally a distraction box in their pocket in the middle of school? Do you know how many kids have seen porn for the first time at school in the hallways? Some doofy kid that's got complete access to the internet, he finds a porn video and he just like turns it around to his buddies and says, hey, check this out. And like, your son's trying to get his crap together so that he can go to geometry class, and all of a sudden he's looking at a hardcore rape scene. And are you there in the hallways? Do you know who your kid, who has a smartphone and who's showing what? No, you don't. But again, we're worshiping at the altar of weird, and we don't want our kids to be weird, right? We want them to fit in. And I just want to ask you guys, I want to challenge you parents, why do you want your kids to fit in with a culture of death, a culture of sex, a culture of destruction of the imago Dei and the destruction of the sanctity of human life and human sexuality? Why do you want them to be a part of that culture? And so again, I think it's very important that families are talking about this. Awareness, I'm in general not big on awareness campaigns, but yeah, it is good. If you're not aware of this, you should be aware that these things are happening. But the thing that you should be more aware of is what you should do to fix this. Again, every family's different. Kids need to get phones at a certain point. But I think you are overestimating how much they will be, quote unquote, left behind if they don't have a smartphone and internet access and social media like all their friends. And we haven't even talked about little girls. The destructive nature of social media for little girls, the bullying that goes on, the comparison, because they're comparing themselves to these airbrushed pictures of these models and these fake AI images and stuff like that, and they're thinking to themselves, "I'm never going to be as cute or as pretty as these girls." You have boys and girls that are losing sleep because they can't put the phone down. Because you're dead asleep in your room, you're good to go, but it's 11 o'clock, it's midnight, and here they are scrolling their phone, just doom scrolling TikTok, doom scrolling, they're on different message boards and different things like that. And again, it's not about what your kid has access to as much as it is about who you're giving access to them. Like that hacker that was on the Sean Ryan show talked about, he created this profile pretending to be like a 14-year-old girl and went to just some random chat room and said hi. And within seconds, he was getting sent sexually explicit materials by people in their DMs, by adult males. So yes, you're giving them access to this negative, harmful content, but you're giving these horrible predators direct access to your child because you don't want them to be weird. Because you want to be able to text them during the day when they're at school, which is also not a good idea. Leave your kid alone, right? It's already hard enough for the teacher to deal with a classroom full of kids that don't really want to be there, that aren't really interested in the subject matter, to try to keep them engaged for 50 minutes before the bell rings and they got to go to their next class where it's just rinse and repeat. And here you are just texting them during the day. How you doing, sweetie? Hope you're having a good day. It's just not a good idea. So I'm all for the proper campaigns to make people aware of this, but we need to go to the source. We've got to stop giving access of our children to these things. Hey guys, real quick, I know a lot of you guys struggle with getting a consistent workout routine. So wherever you get to, whether that's the Globo gym or your home gym or even like a parking lot somewhere, you get there and then you don't know what to do. You get there and you're just like, well, what in the world am I supposed to do today? And you just kind of meander around, and maybe you're trying to get ready for like a mountain hunt in the fall, or you've got a mud race coming up, or you just want to be generally a strong and fit dude for normal everyday life, but you don't have a program that's tailored for you. I want you guys to stop wasting time at the gym or wherever you're working out and just settling for that same old routine that you've always done. It's time for you to get a guide that will help you reach your fitness goals. And that's why I want to introduce you to my friends over at Mountain Tough. Mountain Tough is a fitness and mental toughness app developed by military special operators and mountain hunters that's becoming a global movement for building mentally tough athletes on and off the mountain. So Mountain Tough is a native app ready to be downloaded on all platforms. So that includes iPhone, Android, Apple TV, and Roku. Once you sign up and download the app or access the website, you immediately have access to literally hundreds of exercise programs and thousands of workout videos. Thousands, okay? That includes structured hybrid strength and endurance programs, daily workouts, the full exercise library, mental toughness training, prehab and rehab, the Mountain Tough community and accountability, and a bunch of other stuff. And guys, you can use it all on the go, online or offline, no matter where you decide to train. Just getting started? No problem. They've got programs for beginners. Have minimal gear or no gear? All good. They have minimal gear and bodyweight programs. Wanting to get into or maintain elite level fitness like me? They've got you covered with programs for top tier athletes too. And guys, for a limited time, Mountain Tough is extending Undaunted Lifers like you an incredible offer. Go to mountaintough.com. That's MTNtough.com and enter the code Kyle when you sign up for a monthly plan to receive your first month free after your 14-day free trial. So for guys that aren't good at math, that is 6 weeks free to make sure this app is for you, and I'm sure it will be. That is 6 weeks free on the best-in-class physical and mental training app in the world. Stop wasting time. It's time to get real fitness results and let my friends at Mountain Tough guide the way. Again, go to MTN Tough. That's mountaintough.com, promo code Kyle. All right, guys, let's get into the quick hitters. The Trump White House's presidential message on Holy Week. So this is according to the presidential message on Holy Week that was released. I think it was on the 13th or something like that. I'm actually going to be reading the entirety of it here. This Holy Week, Melania and I join in prayer with Christians celebrating the crucifixion and resurrection of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, the living Son of God who conquered death, freed us from sin, and unlocked the gates of heaven for all of humanity. Beginning with Christ's triumphal entry into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday and the culminating in the Paschal Triduum, which begins on Holy Thursday with Mass and the Lord's Supper, followed by Good Friday, and reaching its pinnacle in the Easter Vigil on Holy Saturday night. This week is a time of reflection for Christians to memorialize Jesus' crucifixion and to prepare their hearts, minds, and souls for his miraculous resurrection from the dead. During the sacred week, we acknowledge that the glory of the Easter Sunday cannot come without the sacrifice Jesus Christ made on the cross. In his final hours on earth, Christ willingly endured excruciating pain, torture, and the execution on the cross out of a deep and abiding love for all of his creation. Through his suffering, we have redemption. Through his death, we are forgiven of our sins. Through his resurrection, we have hope of eternal life. On Easter morning, the stone is rolled away, the tomb is empty, and the light prevails over darkness, signaling that death does not have the final word. This Holy Week, my administration renews its promise to defend Christian faith in our schools, military, workplaces, hospitals, and the halls of government. We will never waver in safeguarding the right to religious liberty, upholding the dignity of life, and protecting God in our public square. As we focus on Christ's redeeming sacrifice, we look to his love, humility, and obedience, even in life's most difficult and uncertain moments. This week, we pray for an outpouring of the Holy Spirit upon our beloved nation. We pray that America will remain a beacon of faith, hope, and freedom for the entire world, and we pray to achieve a future that reflects the truth, beauty, and goodness of Christ's eternal kingdom in heaven. May God bless you and your family during this special time of year, and may he continue to bless the United States of America. I mean, my goodness, guys, like that just makes me so proud, right? That makes me so proud that is coming from the White House of the United States of America. So to go to my big takeaway here, did Donald Trump write this? No, clearly not. But did Donald Trump approve this? Yes, Clearly so. I don't think a message like that goes out without his say-so, right? Now, does Donald Trump believe this personally for himself? Probably not. I would say no. I don't know that we can see the true view of kind of a redemptive, saving faith in Donald Trump. It's hard to judge from here, I'll be honest. But perhaps Donald Trump doesn't actually believe that, and if he maybe doesn't believe that for himself. But my point is, isn't it better than the trash that we got from the Biden White House? I mean, my gosh, just like a theologically rich and dense message like what we got from the Trump administration recently. But the Biden administration made sure to have Trans Day of Visibility also be Easter. Now people are like, oh, that was already on the calendar and it's already this Sunday on whichever calendar, blah, blah, blah. So Easter was the one butting in, like Easter's the problem, right? But just imagine the difference. And so that's a question for all you dorks that were like, oh, we can't support Trump. The never Trumper Republicans, the never Trumper Christians, Catholics, all those people, right? It's like, okay, what do you think Kamala Harris would have posted? Some vapid, nonsensical thing about all religions being equally important. This is just kind of one of the ones that we celebrate. Or something like, hey, yeah, we don't want to celebrate this because Christians are bigots anyway. Like, just think about how the difference would be. So super proud of that. All right, next quick hitter here. This is obviously a terrible, terrible story, but 50 plus Nigerian Christians being slaughtered by Muslim fundamentalists on Palm Sunday. So this is according to the Herald on April the 16th. A brutal attack by suspected Islamist Fulani militias on Palm Sunday has left at least 51 Christians dead in Nigeria's Plateau State, sparking outrage among local communities and silence from much of the international community. The coordinated assault targeted two predominantly Christian villages, with the worst carnage reported in Ziki Village, Bassa County. Witnesses described a night of horror as gunmen stormed homes, setting them ablaze and killing entire families, including women, children, and the elderly, in what local leaders are calling a deliberate act of religious persecution. So I've obviously talked a lot about Islam. I've talked a lot about the least abrogated surahs being the most bloody, and about how these Fulani groups and Boko Haram and Al-Qaeda and ISIS and all these groups, how they're doing exactly what their false prophet Muhammad would want them to do. But my big takeaway here is a question. Did you hear about this? Because again, I'm in these circles and I follow these things where I'm trying to expose myself to as much darkness as possible so that I can teach you guys how to recognize it so that we can push it back, right? I'm here to equip men to push back darkness, right? So I have to kind of be in all these different areas. Did you hear about that? You probably heard a whole lot more about some random MS-13 gang member being accidentally deported without quote-unquote due process. You probably heard more about some of the other things that I'm going to be talking about here in the Quick Hitters today. Did you hear about dozens and dozens and dozens of innocent Christians being slaughtered because they were Christians by Muslims? Did you hear about it? Nope. Just African Christians. Who cares about them, right? They had it coming probably. Christians are just small-minded bigots anyway, right? They're anti-LGBTQ, so they probably had it coming. So, guys, I would just welcome you to do what I'm doing, which is praying for these people. Again, these people were essentially martyred for their faith and what they believe. Islam will not be defeated until Jesus comes back, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't push back against the darkness. We should continue to do so. Next quick hitter here, a state in Australia criminalizing prayer. According to the Christian Institute on April the 16th, let's go into the story here. The Australian state of New South Wales has criminalized prayer, preaching, or pastoral advice that seeks to convince others to live according to biblical sexual ethics. Under the Conversion Practices Ban Act of 2024, which took effect on the 4th of April, anyone accused of changing or suppressing another's gender identity or sexual orientation could be fined up to $100,000 as part of the civil complaints scheme. If the person has deemed to cause substantial mental or physical harm, they could be sentenced to up to 5 years in prison. In new guidance, the New South Wales government confirmed that it could be illegal to advise a same-sex attracted Christian to remain celibate or to pray for them at their request. A video publicizing the law released by the Anti-Discrimination New South Wales group states that conversion practices could resemble prayer or pastoral conversations that is intended to change or suppress someone's gender or sexuality. Although the governmental body says it is not illegal to state what a religion says about a particular topic, this would not protect anyone who encouraged another to adhere to that belief. Anti-Discrimination New South Wales also claims that numerous faith communities actively support LGBTQA people, displaying a symbol of the cross next to transgender and asexual flags. So this is obviously straight out of 1984. This is definite religious persecution. They do not have the rights in Australia that we currently do here in the United States. But right into my big takeaway in that vein, you're a fool if you don't think this could happen here. You are a complete fool if you think we will not experience something like this. Again, I want you to think, what if it was Kamala Harris and that dork Tim Walz? What if they were in the White House right now? What would the Easter season look like and feel like that we just came out of, right? How would you feel about, again, people are worried about the economy, people are worried about, foreign policy and all that, but what about your right to not bake a cake for, use your art for a gay couple's benefit? What about the destruction of image bearers of God in the womb? Just think about the state of the country and the state of those things as we're sitting here right now. But this is how things go. Because Australia is a Western country. Canada is a Western country. UK, these are Western countries, right? And to think that the things that are happening there cannot come here is a foolish thing to do. And we have to fight against it. We have to constantly advocate for and vote for leaders that will keep things like this from happening. So here recently, one of my friends that I grew up with, Cindy Munson, I literally have known her since fourth grade. She's running for governor for the state of Oklahoma in 2026, announced her candidacy. She's my age, single, never married, no kids, female. Her biggest reason for running is that she's not white and that she's not male, right? That's the only reason why she's running, because if she were a white male, she would have no chance in the Democratic Party. One of her main talking points, right, in her campaign, like, here, I'm doing this, I'm going for it, is women being able to control their bodies, right? Which is a euphemism for killing as many Oklahomans in the womb as possible if their mother is a whore and made bad sexual decisions, right? Like, that's one of her main talking points. And so someone might be nice, someone might be a good friend of yours, someone might be a good person to hang out with, you might have good conversation with them, but it's what they believe and how they will govern that matters. And if we continue to kind of just like, oh, I really like this person. Yeah, they don't really agree with how I believe, and they don't have good moral standards or things like that. No big deal. That's what happens in a place like New South Wales, right? Where if you're a pastor and a gender confused teenager comes to you, like what happened at North Point, right? And if they do the right thing, which is the opposite of what North Point did, and they said, hey, you were made male. I know you're confused about your gender. I know you're going through a weird time in puberty, but we're going to stay the course and we're going to support you and we're going to stick to biblical truth. You could get a $100,000 fine and 5 years in prison for that. When the kid came to you for godly counsel, we're really not that far away from something like this happening in this country. And that will be a giant sort. I know I'm flowing quite a bit on this one. That will be a giant sorting mechanism. Okay? COVID was a bit of a sorting mechanism. Who are the pastors that were willing to stand up and say, no, we are actually going to have church, right? The John MacArthurs and the guys up in Canada, I forgot their names, several of the guys that got arrested for holding church, right? Most people just went along to get along, and they just did whatever the government told them to do, and then they, incorrectly quoted Romans 13 to everybody. But there's going to be a big sort in this country, because if in this country something like what just happened in New South Wales goes into law, will your pastor stand up and say, absolutely not? If someone comes to us and they're gender confused or they have same-sex attraction, we're going to uphold a biblical ethic because that supersedes that we are to submit to government, because when the government is not submitted to God and is saying something that is antithetical to the Bible, we are to go to God's law and God's morality above man's law and man's morality. Are they willing to be marched out of church in handcuffs? Because I'm going to venture a guess that's not going to be too far off from reality. A bunch of them will not. They will capitulate. Right? How many pastors are willing to have a prison ministry from the inside because they stood up for God and the biblical ethic that we see? Okay? Something to think about. Next quick hitter here, the debate between Douglas Murray and Dave Stewart on the Joe Rogan Experience. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about this one for too long because I want you guys to go and watch it. So I've got it in the show notes. I forget what number it was, but it was in the last several weeks. But Douglas Murray is a political commentator, a cultural critic, and the author of a bunch of different books. Dave Smith is a stand-up comedian, and he's a libertarian kind of political commentator, podcaster, that type of thing. This is one of the most interesting things that I've seen recently in terms of a online debate, because there's no one that's kind of in the middle as to who won. There are either people that fervently believe that Douglas Murray wiped the floor with Dave Smith. I happen to be one of those people. And then there's people that see Douglas Murray as a fool and that Dave Smith, he's the one that knows the thing, right? So there were several things in the debate that I didn't really care for. So Douglas Murray at one point was talking to Dave Smith and is like, hey, have you ever been to any of these checkpoints? Have you ever been to Israel or Palestine or something like that? And he hadn't. And Douglas Murray just kept pounding him on it. Like, you comment so much on this area and yet you've never been there. You've never been there. You've never been there. So I'm like, well, I've never been inside the Supreme Court, but if the Supreme Court hands down a decision, I feel like I can, say something. But then I was also reminded of, that great scene from Good Will Hunting where Will's sitting on the bench and Robin Williams' character comes out and it's like, you can spout off all these quotes, but you've never been inside the Sistine Chapel. You don't know what it smells like. And so you haven't experienced it. So there were different parts that weren't as strong. But my big takeaway on this one, and I know I'm kind of tinging it for you before you go into it if you haven't already watched it, this debate shows you the difference between a guy that says stuff versus a guy that actually knows stuff. Douglas Murray knows stuff. Dave Smith says stuff. And man, this is what you get with a lot of these libertarian people. Okay. And there's a really funny joke in there that Douglas Murray makes that libertarians are like the bisexuals of politics. It's like, just make a decision. Like, just choose a side. Like, come on. Libertarians have gotten so annoying. And I know I'm going to piss off some of my audience here. Stick with me. I get to have my own opinions. I'm entitled to it. They're so annoying because they love to be like, I don't want to do that. And the government shouldn't tell me this. And they're just kind of like doing their own little Ron Swanson thing without realizing that they're such an ineffective group of people because they basically caucus with Republicans when push comes to shove, because libertarianism is never going to be a major movement, and the Libertarian Party is never going to be a major party in this country. You might lament that. You might hate the two-party system, but guess what, doof? That's the system that you're in. So sure, read the conspiracy theory books and talk about, how things were back in the day. But we have the political reality of right now. So you might have your really fervent beliefs about libertarianism, but you're basically feckless when it comes to ballot box day, because if you vote for the libertarians, you might as well be tossing your vote into the void because that's where it's going. Okay. And a lot of these people, they're kind of the conspiratorial right. They're, I'm just asking questions. And I'm getting very annoyed with these people because they sound smart by saying things like, the real villain of World War II is Winston Churchill. But then they can't actually back it up with anything that's even vaguely historically accurate. It gets you a lot of clicks, right? It's sensational, but it's not attached to anything. So keep that in mind as you go through and watch that debate. Next quick hitter here. I wasn't going to talk about this story because there's so much to it. I thought about leading off with it, but I wasn't going to be able to do another one of these episodes for a few more weeks. So a black teenager stabbing a white teenager to death at a high school track meet in Texas. You might think, why didn't I just put their names? Well, because we've kind of moved past the fact that these people have names to where, it's a black person and a white person. That's kind of the main headline for this story. So I want to talk about this according to the Daily Wire on April 14th. Carmelo Anthony, who's been charged with murdering Austin Metcalf, 17, had his bond drastically reduced and was granted house arrest per a judge's ruling on Monday. Earlier this month, Metcalf was stabbed to death at a high school track meet in Texas after reportedly telling Anthony, 17, that he was sitting in the wrong seat. Anthony had been charged with murder and, according to the arrest warrant, told the police of the fatal stabbing, "I did it." Initially, Anthony's bond was set at $1 million, but a Collin County judge agreed to lower the bond to $250,000. The teen will be required to wear an ankle monitor and stay inside the parent's home if the family cannot postpone, or if the family can postpone, CBS News reports. So reportedly what happened, and by the way, there's going to be a video of this that comes out. You're telling me that there's a track meet, all these kids have smartphones, no one took video of this interaction? As soon as it started to seem like a fight was about to come out, no one pulled out their phones. So we're going to see video of what happened. But reportedly, according to witness reports, Carmelo Anthony was sitting in a seat under the tent of a school that he did not attend. So this is a provocational thing. He didn't just happen to walk in there. He was tired after running a race, and he didn't realize where he was. He knew exactly where he was, and he knew he shouldn't be there. Austin Metcalf apparently confronts him and says, "Hey, you need to leave. This isn't your tent. This isn't your seat." And Carmelo Anthony basically said, "What are you going to do about it?" Okay, so Austin Metcalf, who's by all intents and purposes, or was a great kid, A student, captain, football team, like going to go to college, like good kid. They get into a little bit of a scuffle where he's like trying to get him out of tent. Like, you got to leave. You got to get out of here, right? And so Carmelo Anthony says, do something. Like, he's like welcoming him to a fight. Carmelo Anthony goes into his bag, his backpack, pulls out a knife, stabs Austin Metcalf in the heart, takes off running. Okay? He takes off running. He chucks the knife into the bleachers. When he's caught by the cops, he's like, hey, is this self-defense? Like, I mean, I stabbed this kid, but isn't that self-defense? Right? Basically saying like he definitely did it on purpose. But now what it's become is it's become a civil rights issue somehow. There was a recent press conference where this kind of pastor attorney guy who's an awful person, long track record and of being violent and terrible towards people. They get up there and they're talking about it, and Austin Metcalf's dad came to this and he said he's already forgiven Carmelo Anthony and all these types of things, again, for stabbing his son in cold blood. And they like castigated the father and they kicked him out of this press conference even though he wasn't saying anything or doing anything. There's a lot of people that are tracking how much money is being raised by GoFundMe's or similar things for each kid. So Carmelo Anthony has raised way more money via GoFundMe. A murderer has raised way more money via his GoFundMe than the one for Austin Metcalf. There's also this family. So tell me if you've heard something that sounds like this before. The family of Carmelo Anthony, they didn't just go back to their home. They're in like this gated neighborhood in this palatial estate, like this mansion right now. That's where they're staying, even though part of their bond being reduced from $1 million to $250,000 was financial hardship. And yet we're at like $500,000 being raised for this kid. But if you go into the messages for the people that are donating money, it's just anti-white racist hatred. It's congratulatory for Carmelo Anthony, like, hey, good job killing the white devil. We're evening the score. That somehow because of Jim Crow or slavery or something, that this kid stabbing another kid in cold blood was a net positive, okay? So I have some big takeaways and some questions as it pertains to this case. Because here are some questions that we haven't gotten answers for yet or even logical explanations. Why was Carmelo Anthony in the tent for a school that he doesn't attend to begin with? Why was he there? Nobody's told us. I think it's pretty clear he was trying to provoke an altercation. Also, why did he have a knife with him under that tent where he was trying to provoke someone into a fight? Why did he have a knife? Also, can we reasonably assume that this is his first brush with violence? Because again, we're going to be getting all the pictures of Carmelo Anthony, like, at his graduation and smiling on camera and all those types of things. Are you telling me this 17-year-old kid has never been violent before or been exposed to violence of that nature? Are you telling me he went from perfect kid sitting at the bus stop reading his Bible to stabbing somebody in the heart, killing them? And then also, question, why do leftists always pick the worst heroes? This kid, this murderer, right, alleged murderer, he murdered someone in cold blood because he told him to get out of the tent that he wasn't supposed to be in to begin with. This was a high school scuffle that turned into him killing somebody in cold blood. And he's somehow a hero. When you listen to this kid's mom, Carmelo Anthony's mom, and you listen to some of these people, you would think that Carmelo Anthony was dead and he was killed by a racist white person. This kid's still alive, right? He's in jail. He should go to prison for the rest of his life, right? Unless what's being reported is completely, false at this point. He should go to prison for the rest of his life. He should get the death penalty for murdering someone like that. But why do leftists pick people like this? George Floyd, horrible person. Michael Brown, awful person. But these are the heroes, right? And so again, these are, kind of the heroes that are raised up in the black community. What about Ben Carson, right? What about Thomas Sowell? What about pick somebody that's not a thug? Why can't they be a hero and someone that we look up to? Why are we looking up to rappers and murderers? And I guess my last thing on here, because some of you are going to be offended, that the fact that I called Carmelo Anthony a thug. But let me just inform you, I'm not calling Carmelo Anthony a thug because he's black. I'm calling him a thug because he's clearly a thug. I grew up in a town with a lot of thugs. I had a lot of thugs that were my friends. And guess what? I had knowledge of and friends that were black thugs, white thugs, Mexican thugs, Asian thugs, all shapes, sizes, backgrounds, and socioeconomic statuses, right? I knew some rich thugs, right? You're a thug if you do thuggish things, like having a knife in your backpack, knowing that you're probably going to get in a fight, and knowing that you're not just going to be defending yourself with a knife because you feel threatened for your life, but because you know you're going to use it. Maybe because you heard it in a rap song, Maybe because you got the idea from one of your stupid friends. Maybe because you've been playing too many violent video games and you think this is an appropriate level of defense in a situation that I started, right? That's what's going through his head. Okay? So what this kid deserves, if everything comes out to be accurate to what we know now, he deserves to spend the rest of his life in prison for doing what he did to the Metcalf family. And we shouldn't feel bad about it. He made his bed. Now he's got to lie in it. Next quick hitter here, a proposed California ballot measure named in honor of the alleged murderer, Luigi Mangione. So speaking of, lionizing murderers. This is according to AOL, which is apparently still a thing, on March the 30th. Californians could soon be voting on a new healthcare law named after Luigi Mangione, the Ivy League grad who is accused of executing the CEO of United Healthcare in cold blood. He's accused of it. It's on video. He basically admitted to it. The Luigi Mangione Access to Healthcare Act was put forward by retired Los Angeles attorney Paul Eisner, who said the sick stunt was necessary to get the publicity for his proposal. The proposed ballot measure would make it illegal for an insurance company to delay, deny, or modify any medical procedure or medication recommended by a doctor if there could be serious consequences, including disability, death, amputation, permanent disfigurement, loss, or reduction of any bodily function, according to the document filed to the California Attorney General's office. So big takeaway on this one. This likely isn't going anywhere, but the big takeaway is it is evidence of a shocking sickness in our culture that so many people are now fans and supporters of Luigi Mangione. So we see the shocking video. He's got this, 3D printed gun. He walks up behind the healthcare CEO, who he had been tracking for apparently weeks, shoots him in the back, executes him. And then here's the thing. People are lionizing this guy as a hero, right? He killed one of the 1%, one of these people that runs one of these horrible companies and all that. And you're thinking to yourself, wow, there are a lot of companies I don't like. There are a lot of people that I don't want to give my support or my dollars, right? But I don't think we should kill the CEOs because I don't like their product or how they do business. But that's precisely what a lot of people have been doing. So Bill Burr used to be one of my favorite comedians, but he married a wild leftist years ago, and it's clearly affected him. And now he's kind of in the Hollywood elite. So his comedy has changed. His viewpoints has changed. He basically came right out and said, free Luigi, right? Free this kid. It's okay that he killed somebody that makes a lot of money, that works for a company that operates in a way that he personally does not like. And it's also kind of rich. They're calling this guy a hero, like he's Robin Hood type of thing. He tried to get away with it. He didn't shoot the guy and march over to the police station and say, I'm turning myself in. I have done my duty for humanity. Worship me. He tried to get away. But Mr. Ivy League was apparently a moron when it came to pulling off a crime because his face was everywhere in the area. He's on video doing this crime, and then he basically admits to it. So he's going to be in prison for the rest of his life for doing something like this, but he's going to be lionized again. He's going to be lionized by people that think it's okay. Oh, this handsome Ivy League guy, he's one of us. This eat the rich idea. And when you see so many people celebrating thugs like Luigi Mangione and Carmelo Anthony, what does that tell you about our sick to death culture? This is a culture that is in desperate need of the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's literally the only thing that can save these people, because you can't have a Christian worldview and a biblical ethic and look at Carmelo Anthony and Luigi Mangione in any other way. You may feel pity for them because these are clearly not followers of Christ. You can pray for their salvation. You could pray that they can repent of the horrible, awful, satanic things that they have done in the name of whatever philosophy and ideology, or devoid of any philosophy or ideology. But to look at these people as heroes is absolutely asinine and incredibly concerning. All right, next one here, a proposed Colorado House bill that would categorize misgendering and dead naming as child abuse. So this is according to Breitbart on April the 16th. According to the bill's summary, the legislation would direct courts making child custody decisions and determining the best interests of a child for purposes of parenting time to consider dead naming and misgendering or threatening to publish material related to an individual's sex change services as types of coercive control. The bill would additionally define dead naming and misgendering as discriminatory acts in the Colorado Anti-Discrimination Act, which would essentially prohibit calling sex-confused individuals by their real names or biological sex in places of public accommodation. So if you're not familiar, dead naming is like, okay, this person has been John their entire life, but now they want to be, they're 14 and they want to be Jane. And so if you call them John, you're dead naming them because they said their name is Jane, right? And then misgendering is obviously like, okay, if you say to John, he, you use masculine pronouns, that is misgendering them, okay? Big takeaway on this one. Colorado has fallen. It's a beautiful state, but it has two horrible pockets of deep, deep blue that ruins the entire state. But your state doesn't have to be fallen like Colorado, okay? Because people in Boulder and people in Denver have destroyed that state in a lot of different ways. And it doesn't just start with the fact that people in those areas are like, oh, wolves are so cute. Shouldn't we just like reintroduce them into Colorado, which is going to decimate the elk population, all kinds of other things. So all you people with your Colorado hunting stuff and all that, you try to sell that property. You should probably sell it because the elk and mule deer are going to be gone in short order as the wolf packs continue to grow in that state. But again, this goes back to electing people that are not going to allow this type of insanity, because I don't think this bill is going to be stopped. I think it's going to the Colorado Senate. It should pass, and then it's going to go to the governor's desk, and it will be signed. So if you're a father, because this is always kind of how it is, if you're a father and the mom is trying to transition the kids, and you say, no, I'm not going to call my kid by a different name and a gender that's not their gender. I'm absolutely not going to do that. The state of Colorado is essentially going to keep you from your children. They are going to steal your children from you. So guys, if you live in Colorado and you don't trust your wife, or you're in one of those situations, you probably need to get out of that state. And don't move to a state like California or Illinois or New Jersey or New York or Oregon or Washington. Come to a free state like Oklahoma, Texas, Arizona, Tennessee, Florida. Go to a place like that where something like that will not happen as long as the electorate keeps doing their job. All right, next one here, a proposed Oklahoma House bill that would allow for the chemical castration of child sex offenders. So this is according to KOCO News 5 on March the 11th. A bill that just passed the Oklahoma House floor would require convicted child sex offenders to be chemically castrated before they're eligible for parole. Fetgatter, a Republican from Okmulgee, said chemical castration would be an option for offenders who want to be paroled, or they would be required to serve 100% of their sentences. House Bill 2422 would affect those who are over 21 who have committed a crime involving physical touch against a minor under 13 that requires registration as a sex offender, and who have received a mental health evaluation determining the likelihood they would commit subsequent offenses if released on parole. The bill now heads to the Senate to be heard. I think that this will be passed by the Senate. I think Stitt will certainly sign this into law. Big takeaway on this one. Thank you, Oklahoma. I just talked about the craziness in California and Colorado. Thank you, Oklahoma. Yeah, people like to talk about, oh, there's nothing to do there, and the state's super flat, and you're bad in this category or bad in that category. At least we're not insane. We got our issues, we got our potholes, but we're not insane. This is amazing. My problem with this bill is it doesn't go too far, because you're basically giving these people an option. Okay, you can get out early, we just need to chemically castrate you, or you have to serve your whole sentence. I think it should be like, oh, you raped or molested a kid sexually, physical castration, and then death, right? Why do we want this person back in polite society? Because, again, most of these people that offend in this way, they don't do it once. They were just overwhelmed with temptation one time, and then they never do it again. That's not real life. When you look at, statistically speaking, when these people are caught, they typically have tens and tens and tens of victims, right? This is just an attitude that they can't stop unless the gospel stops them, unless they have a true repentance and change of heart, right? But that's God's work to do. But for us, in this society, we have to protect children. This is one way to do it. So good job, Oklahoma. Next one here, a pit bull mauling a 7-month-old baby girl to death in Ohio. But you didn't need me to say pit bull, right? You should have already known that. According to the New York Post on April the 12th, an Ohio infant was killed by one of her family's 3 pit bulls, her parents said on social media. I will never understand why, Mother Mackenzie Copley wrote on Facebook Saturday, posting pictures of her 7-month-old daughter cuddling with the family dogs. I'm so lost and broken. This was the same dog who was side by side with my baby every single day, she wrote. So let me go to my big takeaway, because we do have a lot of new listeners. Some of you are not going to like this, but welcome to the show. Pit bulls are not domesticated animals. They're wild animals, and they should be banned. You should not be able to own them. If you want my full take on this, go to episode 377 of this podcast. Okay. Episode 377. The name of the podcast is YouTube Censoring Us, Banning Pit Bulls, Tears from Jordan Peterson, and more. Okay. Episode 377. But here's kind of the skinny version on this. Pit bulls were literally bred to do what they do when they maul people to death. They were bred to do it. So this isn't like a brokenness in particular pit bulls. This is what they were bred to do. Pit bulls make up less than 6% of the dog population in the United States, but they're responsible for 68% of dog attacks and over 50% of dog-related deaths since 1982. Okay? Their victims also are almost always small children and elderly women. And I've gotten all the objections, guys. Oh, it's the owner's, it's the owner's fault, not the dog's fault. Oh, well, what are we going to do now? We're going to ban pools because kids die in pools? Are we going to ban ladders because people fall off ladders and die? Well, guess what? Pools can't grab you and then hold you under until you die. Ladders can't chase you down the street, grab you by the throat, and stay clamped on until you stop moving. Because duh. And my big takeaway on episode 377 is that I am completely unwilling to err on the side of any dog over any human life. Because I've said before, I think pit bulls are awesome. I think they're really cool. If I were a single guy that didn't have nieces and nephews, I would likely own a pit bull. Because they're athletic, they're awesome, and guess what? Pit bulls aren't killing 38-year-olds that are strong and fit. Again, they're killing children, 7-month-olds, 5-year-olds. They're killing 80-year-old women, right? That's what they're doing. We have to stop looking at them as if they're just cute animals. And when I see pictures that people post, because I was from a town where people fought their pit bulls, right? I had friends that made money fighting their dogs, right? But somewhat often in the town that I'm from, like there are kids that are mauled to death by the family pit bull. And these parents just have, oh my gosh, how could this happen? The dog was with this kid all the time. I saw them wag their tail. I saw them lay next to this baby. But then one day they remember, I'm a pit bull, and they attack the kid without provocation and without being provoked in any way, right? And again, go back to that episode. I talk about it all. You keep hearing stories about this. And again, for those of you that are like pro pit bull apologists and all that, I didn't even need to tell you the breed of the dog and you knew it was a pit bull. How'd you know it was a pit bull? Chew on that one. Next quick hitter here. Scientists claiming to have resurrected the extinct dire wolf. This is according to CNN on April the 8th. A species of wolf that died out some 12,500 years ago lives again as the world's first successful de-extincted, that's a word, I guess, animal, according to Dallas-based biotech company Colossal Biosciences. Colossal scientists have created 3 direwolf pups by using ancient DNA, cloning, and gene editing technology to alter the genes of a gray wolf, the prehistoric direwolf's closest living relative, the company announced Monday. The result is essentially a hybrid species similar in appearance to its extinct forerunner. So big takeaways here. First one here, these are not direwolves. Why are people pretending like these are direwolves? I know some of you watch Game of Thrones. You think direwolves are cool. Like, oh, this big, ominous white wolf. It's not a direwolf. This is a hybrid wolf. They took DNA and they kind of just made this thing that it's a gray wolf that's going to have a different color hair. This is similar to when you breed dogs. How is a golden doodle a thing? Right? That's not a thing that would have probably happened in nature. That's something that was created. Right? So these just aren't dire wolves. So we need to kind of stop talking about like they are. But the big question about this is why even do this? What is the motivation to do this? Because we hear people like thinking about, oh, we need to bring back mammoths and we need to bring back all these other different things. Because it makes sense that animals that are supposed to go extinct. And that there is a particular reason that they are extinct now. And so that if you try to interject those animals back into an ecosystem, similar to what I was talking about with the, wolves that have a taste for cattle and elk that they just put in Colorado because they're morons, like this could cause some major issues, right? This could cause some big time issues because guys, anytime that you start messing with artificial life, it could be problematic. Like this is a playing God scenario. Like this isn't just going to be a random net positive. Like we think we can control this, but it's just like, I think the movie Jurassic Park, it holds up. It's a beautiful movie, even 30 years later. But like, there are issues when you start playing God with these certain areas and you're just like, there's not just going to be a non-impact of you trying to do these types of things. Okay, there's going to be a negative impact. I just don't think we should be messing with it. All right, next one here, the UK Supreme Court ruling that trans women are not actually women. According to USA Today on April the 16th, the United Kingdom's highest court ruled on Wednesday that the definition of a woman under equality legislation referred to biological sex, but it said trans people would not be disadvantaged by its landmark decision. The Supreme Court's judgment related to whether a trans woman with a gender recognition certificate, a formal document that gives legal recognition of someone's new gender, is protected from discrimination as a woman under Britain's Equality Act. The landmark case is the latest example of the wider debate around transgender rights ending up before the courts. Big takeaway on this one, and other breaking news, water is wet. We live in the dumbest time in human history where a Supreme Court of a major country and a major economy had to tell you, no, men that dress up with women, men that have a fetish, looking at themselves in the mirror with makeup on and long hair and painted nails, these are not actually women. This is so ridiculous. Why are we even talking about this? Next one here. FBI senior leadership using an internal gag order to cover up the Hunter Biden laptop story. This is according to the New York Post. The FBI knew the Post had received a hard drive copy of the laptop from Donald Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, because it had covert surveillance warrant on the former mayor's iCloud. On October the 14th of 2020, the morning the story was published, an FBI analyst confirmed to Twitter that the laptop was real, but his bosses then admonished him and lamented in one message that he won't shut up. Another message shows that an FBI attorney slapped a gag order on any discussion of laptop. Please do not discuss Biden matter, the lawyer tells one FBI employee whose name is redacted. Big takeaway on this one, everything is just a conspiracy theory until it's not. Okay, now some of you would be like, hey, well, what'd you say about libertarians and Dave Smith? Okay, this is one of those things that we were told by plenty of people that used to work in the FBI and the CIA and all that this was Russian disinformation, misinformation, right? The Hunter Biden laptop, there was no there. And we also know that could have changed the outcome of the 2020 election if this was covered in a way that it would have been covered had it been, the son of Donald Trump's laptop, right? This was real from the beginning. We all knew it was real from the beginning. And the FBI knew it was real before the public even knew it existed. Okay? But this is just another one of those things that happened back in 2020. It's kind of like any COVID information that comes out now. So something that was conspiracy theory and just lamented and lambasted now is being confirmed and just kind of floats through the news cycle, just in and out. And we just don't hear about it anymore. And we just kind of go on with our everyday lives because we're like, what can we do? Several years ago, well, what we can do is we can think about that the next time we're told something by our moral betters in the government, right? Especially if they're ran by a Democratic administration, right? To be like, yeah, I'm going to take that with a little bit of a grain of salt. Okay, let's get to the last one here. I've been excited to talk about this one. So some of the best jiu-jitsu advice that you could ever get. So this advice is going to come from Jeff Glover. So Jeff Glover is an OG jiu-jitsu guy. He has kind of a different philosophy on jiu-jitsu. He's taught several seminars at the Forge, my gym here in Edmond, Oklahoma. He's a smaller guy, and so his jiu-jitsu has to be fairly different, and his technique has to be fairly sharp because if he's doing these, super fights against guys that could outweigh him by 100 pounds, like he's got to be able to withstand that. So we're going to go to a clip here, and I just want you to hear what he's talking about whenever he's talking about jiu-jitsu.
I don't know how to answer that question. I don't really do MMA. If I was going to do MMA, it's more like old school Gracie style jiu-jitsu. Like come here. MMA is more like keep the person so close and closed guard like this that they can't hit you with their left hand. If he tries to hit me with his right hand, we block and set up triangle. Right? That should be like one of the first lessons you teach a student. They come into jiu-jitsu. Before you teach them sport jiu-jitsu, you got to teach them don't get punched to death jiu-jitsu. Right? That's like on the feet. Stand up. That's like on the feet. You got to do the Hoist Gracie lesson. The distract and clench a motherfucker before they can punch you. Or stay so far out of the range that they can't punch you. Like, come at me. Stay so far out of the range that they can't hit you. Right? But if they shorten that distance on you, you got to clinch. Students need to know that as jiu-jitsu people, we don't stand in the mid-range and exchange punches with somebody because we're not boxers. We're jiu-jitsu people, unless you like boxing and you want to stand there and exchange with somebody. But if you know that's going to be a losing battle, why do it? Right? That's where Gracie-style jiu-jitsu comes in.
So right to my big takeaway on this one, the best quote from Jeff Glover in this clip is, before you teach them sport jiu-jitsu, you've got to teach them don't get punched to death jiu-jitsu. Okay, so let me explain this for people because people that do jiu-jitsu will kind of understand this, but even if you don't, you should be able to. So there are some very, very fancy styles of jiu-jitsu that don't translate well to a real life scenario. Okay. There are certain positions that you can get in. This is especially true for guard players. Maybe you're a guard player, you prefer to be on your back for whatever reason. That if you get there and stay there in a jiu-jitsu match, you're probably in a good spot. You may even be in a dominant spot. But in a real life fight situation, you're going to get probably beaten to death. You might be able to get stabbed. So that's why when you watch combat jiu-jitsu matches, that's where you can use open hand strikes, palm strikes against your opponent. There are certain positions that people just won't stay in, right? That's one thing that I encourage people with their jiu-jitsu, especially when you're working a guard move like a pass or setting up some sort of a sub or something like that. Just do a class where the guy in guard has big gloves on, 16-ounce gloves, and he's giving you like 50% punches, right? So not full off like trying to kill you, but just 50% punches trying to keep you honest, okay? And this is why I try to tell people to prioritize real-world jiu-jitsu, okay? Prioritize real-world jiu-jitsu, because I tend to agree with kind of the Gracie, the old school Gracie guys, with guys like Chad Robichaux, guys like Tim Kennedy. These are guys that are, multi-level black belts, 3rd and 4th degree black belts. They've been doing this for 30 years or so, but they don't spend a whole lot of time in positions and drilling positions that are disadvantageous. They spend a lot of time drilling positions where they are having the advantage. So in a real fight, you don't want to be on your back because there's not a mat underneath you. It's likely asphalt, right, or concrete. And so you don't want to be throwing up flying triangles and flying arm bars and things like that. You don't be rolling under for berimbolo and trying to get into some sort of leg entanglement. That's just not really something you should do. You should be able to get someone to the ground and hold them in a position, probably like a knee on belly or a mount or a gift wrap or something like that, and wait for help to arrive. And your head's up. You can kind of see if this guy's got a buddy that's trying to kick your head into the next county, like you're good to go. I'm not saying you shouldn't do sport jiu-jitsu. Sport jiu-jitsu can be a lot of fun. I'm not saying you shouldn't watch these Instagram videos of people hitting these fancy moves. It's always cool to learn a fancy move or two that actually works with your jiu-jitsu game. But just remember when you're drilling, remember when you're rolling at practice, and even remember when you're competing, what if this were a real fight? Because again, for me personally, I'm not trying to win a bunch of $20 medals. If you want to compete, I am pro that. Compete. If you want to be a professional at jiu-jitsu and that's your goal, 2 thumbs up. You do you, boo. Like I'm there with you, and guess what? I will help you train and I will help you get ready for those tournaments and all that. But for me, for a guy that gets to train as much as I get to train, for a guy that's at my age and at my skill level as I'm, making my way towards black belt, I'm going to prioritize jiu-jitsu that works. And speaking of fighting that works, guys, I've told you this a bunch, but again, we get new listeners every week. Please train real fighting styles. For the love of God, train real fighting styles that you can actually train. Okay? Because I've been told by people, well, hey, I train Kung Fu, I train Taekwondo, I train Karate, I train Krav Maga, I train all these different things. And the thing is those fighting styles do have some applicability. Okay? That they do. Now, Krav is a little bit different because I know, Israel, like they created and all that kind of stuff, but you can't technically train it. Because Krav involves like eye gouging and fish hooking and like raking of the testicles and like all this kind of stuff. You can't train that. Right? It's like, all right, guys, do 3 sets of eye gouging, right, on your partner. Like that's going to be a really short class, okay? Lots of doctor's visits. But let's use mixed martial arts as a standard, okay? So for those of you that are MMA fans, let's just stick with the UFC because that's the main dominant hegemon in this world of MMA, okay? Which UFC fighters' primary fighting styles are Taekwondo or Karate or Wing Chun or Krav Maga? Can you name one? I think there's like 500 plus fighters on the roster of the UFC. Can you name one guy whose primary fighting style is one of those things? It just doesn't work. And MMA is the closest thing that you will get to a street fight scenario. Again, it's formalized. There's gloves, there's rules, there's things you can and can't do, right? But it's the closest thing to a real fight. Now, do guys like Yair Rodriguez or Stephen Wonderboy Thompson or some of these guys, do they have some of these different kind of like interesting techniques? Yes, but that's not their primary fighting style. The primary fighting styles are jiu-jitsu, wrestling, Western boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai. That's it. And I have heard people also say to me, well, Kylan, in a street fight, all bets are off, right? So like, we don't need to be training stuff like in a gi with rules and all that. We need to be like doing real training. Well, guys, that just means those fancy striking styles, all this like spinning kicks and elbows and all that kind of stuff, that's even less realistic in a real fight. Because guys, I mean, how many fights have you seen where guys are just standing up, moving around like point fighting or something like that? That's not a real thing that happens. If fights get dirty, it's going to end up on the ground. Guys, and if you don't know how to fight on the ground, you're going to get killed. Maybe literally or figuratively. Like, that's what's going to happen. And so I am pro, you learning stuff on the feet, but it's got to be like real stuff. It's got to be Western boxing, kickboxing, and Muay Thai. It's got to be real stuff like that, because here's the thing. I was talking to someone about Krav Maga the other day. I was like, okay, send your Krav instructor to my gym and we'll do an MMA round. Okay? We'll do bare knuckle MMA round. Because guess what? One of his fancy strikes is going to have to knock me out before I close the distance. Because once I close my distance and get my hands on you, I will take you to the ground. I will pass your non-existent guard. I will mount you, and then I will elbow you until you tap or give up your back, and then I choke you. And I'm not high level. I'm a brown belt, but like, again, guys, when you talk about it, there are people that have been black belts for longer than I've been training jiu-jitsu. So I'm not a high level guy. I'm not an MMA fighter. But like this idea that these fighting styles actually work against somebody that knows the ground game is foolish. But also, there are guys that are ground fighters, wrestlers, jiu-jitsu guys that don't know anything on the feet. So you do have to be prepared for that situation as well, because guess what? If you can't get someone to the ground, or if your jiu-jitsu game is predicated on pulling guard, which I'm not a huge fan of, but if that's what your game is and you can't control where the fight takes place, you better know some stand-up. Again, don't train stand-up things that don't work in real life. Train, Western boxing, kickboxing, and Muay Thai. But like, again, guys, if you're going to be a complete person in terms of being able to defend yourself and defend others, you have to be realistic about things that work and that don't work. And Jeff Glover, who is a super high level guard player, like black belt type guy, he is thinking in terms of what's going to work in a real situation. And he's big on sport jiu-jitsu. But again, if you don't learn the jiu-jitsu that keeps you from getting punched to death, you're going to be at a disadvantage. All right, guys, that'll do it for today. I appreciate all of your attention. But before we go, we are going to do a quick resilience boost. At Undaunted.Life, our mission is equipping men to push back darkness with content that forges spiritual, mental, and physical resilience. Got a donation link on our website. Guys, again, I messed it up from the beginning, but it's Undaunted.Life/donate. Undaunted.Life/donate. We've got our Dominion program, guys. That's our coaching program. We'll be releasing some more information on that here soon, because we're getting ready for the next teams. They're going to start in July, so you can apply for that there. You can get on the wait list for when the time comes. We got the promo code for the Mountain Tough website, and I've got everything I talked about in the main subject and the quick hitters. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Wherever you're listening to this, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a positive 5-star review. If you want me to come speak live at your event or on your podcast, just shoot me an email to info@Undaunted.Life. That's info@Undaunted.Life. Follow us on Instagram and like us on Facebook, and check out our website for everything else, including how to donate to keep more content like this coming your way. Just go to www.Undaunted.Life. And as always, we want to thank the band Holy Name for allowing us to use their music for our content. The music on this podcast is their song Perpetua, which is off their self-titled debut album on Face Down Records. The links are in the description. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Remember, keep pushing back darkness, keep forging spiritual, mental, and physical resilience, keep seeking the Lion of Judah.